maybe energetic field impact from the star Sirius, perhaps. I don't know.
Tell me about that.
I have no idea.
You're bullshitting, are you?
Basically.
I've just had literally about 15 minutes ago, my brother sent me a message saying the same thing. And he couldn't sleep last night. And he must have got to sleep after 3 or 4 a.m. So
yeah, I tossed and turned all night. I don't know why, but anyway.
Is there anything on your mind that?
Not overly, I don't think. I just. I do. As we've talked about the last couple of weeks, had the strong sense of a new beginning.
Yeah.
But I'm not. But I'm not stressed or anxious about it.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And work-wise, any problems? Excuse me.
No, just too much of it probably.
Yeah.
But I have been saying no a fair bit, and so. There's a lot going on there, but I try not to get entangled in it.
Yeah. I can imagine you wouldn't, so that's good. That would keep you awake. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I might be in for a better sleep tonight. Who knows?
Yeah. What I told my brothers, I don't think we've actually ever shared it, but the one thing I do as a routine every single night when I go to bed, is I get into bed and I lie on my back because I find that a very comfortable position. I can't go to sleep on it because, my throat blocks up and so I snort or something and it wakes me up. So, but until I get sort of tired, I lie on my back and I do a very deep breathing from my lower, as if my abdomen is sort of coming out, pushing out my lower stomach. And and so it's like a big bulge down there. And I breathe in and then very determinedly and pretty slowly, but I breathe in and then I immediately start slowly breathing out all through my nose. And then the next breath or 2 or 3 breaths after that, I would breathe in my upper chest, let my upper chest come out. And inevitably when I do that, I start to yawn. And a big yawn, and it's like I can feel the sort of mucus in my throat sort of flowing out. And
it's a good idea because I guess through the day we probably breathe quite shallow, don't we? So.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's good for me. I just find that an easy habit to get into, and it certainly brings oxygen to the brain. And so what needs to happen happens, and I find that it clears my nostril passages, and I start feeling tired. And I stay lying on my back. I don't know for how long. It can't be more than a few minutes. And then when I sort of feel totally relaxed, because you do with that deep breathing, and then I just turn over, usually onto my right side. I find myself now preferring, whereas historically it used to be my left side. But these days, the last year or so has been on my right side. And then,
I think we underestimate, the power of our breath too, don't we? So.
Yeah, and that's why I'm sharing it, because I really feel that it's important to do this deep breathing. My brother doesn't he can't go along. I took a chance and thought maybe he'll do it secretly because he doesn't want to let me know that he's doing it. But it certainly helps. And if I'm going like I have this afternoon, I try and have a nap every afternoon.
Yeah.
And
do you find that beneficial?
Yeah, as long as I don't sleep too long.
Mm.
Okay. I find it beneficial. If I've, anything between 10 minutes and 40 minutes is fine. Okay. And I just let, nature take its course. And I don't try and set my alarm or anything like that. But I can, if I apply my mind and say, okay, I'm going to sleep for 15 minutes today. I've got work to do and get up. And sure enough, the next time I look at my clock, it's 15 minutes since I laid down. So it's very powerful, that self-suggestion, certainly in the afternoon nap. Okay. And then other times, there are times where I just feel so tired. And I just get into bed. I said, over to you. You can wake up when you like. Okay.
Yeah.
And
well, I was like that on, I think it was Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, I slept in until like 7:30, and like I haven't slept in that long since I was like 18 years of age.
And how did you feel when you got up?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, but I was very tired though on Saturday. So I guess in some respects it was a sleep of healing, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. 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 I've read some interesting things over time, and also referred to in an interview that I listened to about I mean, you and I know the importance of sleep, and that we need to get regular sleep. But what I didn't realize was that it's actually important to stay within a sort of a time discipline. The time that you go to bed is roughly the same, within an hour of itself. And then when you wake up, that's when you get up. Okay. Not because an alarm went off or whatever. And I don't know, actually, I haven't counted how many hours, but if I go to bed somewhere between 9 and 10 p.m., which should be the time I do, the latest 10 p.m., then I wake up somewhere 4:30 to 5:30, 5 and 6 maybe, and I get up and I'm aware that I'm woken up, okay. But there's another aspect of my body that says, oh no, okay. I don't quite know what it is, but I get up and go to the bathroom and then I come back and it's there isn't a natural the sun is getting up much later these days.
Yeah.
And so, historically, when I woke up at 5 o'clock, it was bright and light, Now it's not. So,
I find the same too when I walk the dog. It's quite dark. So
yeah. So you don't change your routines during the week and walking the dog and so on?
Yeah, no, I just do the same. It's funny, a lot of people do change their routine.
Yeah.
You see a lot more people out early in summer than you do in winter, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's not unusual in winter not to see anyone else out. So. But sometimes at the height of summer though, you could see, a dozen other people.
Yeah, quite honestly, I only see people over the weekends walking when I get out. But I'm also a very irregular walker, time-wise, because if I've got a get set up class, then that might be at the time I usually go for a walk, and then I only maybe walk maybe an hour after the class,
Mm.
and then it can often be too hot. I don't walk in the heat.
No.
So
So did you end up settling on a name for your new service?
yeah, thank you very much for your contribution. Much appreciated. And I've in my head, I've adopted the combination of your suggestion that Sue suggested. Okay, your word by Michael Plumstead, and then I woke up this morning, strangely enough, I just thought to myself, and Sue had a very early class, 4 a.m. class.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she didn't open any spaces for 4 a.m. They just dumped it on her, and she didn't complain. She just gets up early. Anyway, after her class, it was 5 a.m. and it was, that's the time I wake up. And I was thinking, I've told you that my visa's coming up for renewal, and we don't. We cannot renew the existing visa because the government have taken it away from everybody, and so we're going to look at another visa. And I just thought to myself this morning, Michael, just freeze. Wait until the visa story is over and done with, okay, and then pick up on this project, and don't even start preparing, okay. Just let it go, because we have no idea what the visa does. At the worst, it'll we can't prove him will be sent home. The one that we're looking at is very expensive, but it's a possibility, okay. And
it's a horrible process, isn't it? It's a really horrible process,
It is a horrible process. My mate in Brisbane, as you know, the South African Jan Rautenbach, okay, he's younger than me, and he got a sort of like a work permit and to start a business and so on, and he's now got a visa for 10 years, okay, and after 10 years he has to pay, and I'm not exaggerating, $1, $100,000.
Goodness gracious.
Because of his type of visa that he's on, whatever it is, and it's outrageous. So anyway, coming back to mine, we're not in that sort of league, but we've got, as we're getting a sponsorship. We've got an agreed, not sponsorship as in money, but sponsorship as in a company wanting Sue to work for them. Okay, so they have got to pay $8,000, and Sue and I have to pay $8,000. Okay, then we've got the visa for 4 years. Okay, so
they make her employer pay $8,000.
Yeah, it's a strange. I wish I could remember the number. Then you could look it up. I don't. It doesn't ring a bell in my head. But yeah, they now are asking government to allow Sue to stay. They want to employ her, and so they guarantee her employment. Okay, and she has to guarantee that she stays with the same employment. Okay, and we don't know. That's just what we're going to start the process. We've started by asking them, and theoretically they've agreed to go through the process. So that could happen, and yeah, we basically, we don't have $8,000. It scares me because I really, 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 really don't want to put myself in debt. Okay. I've just done a class this morning Get Set Up class about that. It was called Avoiding High Interest Debt Traps. Okay. And it's strange, peculiar. Here I'm heading for this decision, and I have to do, and so it was a new class. I had to design the class from scratch. And I designed it, and when I presented it, there was only one person in class, okay, and we interacted very well in the class. I love it when somebody's, I don't mind that there's only one in the class, but it just makes it all much better if they interact.
Yeah.
And she really did. But also, strangely enough, she's a young person, okay, compared to all the other old age. She's in her 30s. And I didn't know they were even allowed in our organization, quite honestly. But anyway, she is, and she's there. And she enjoys my classes, so she comes into nearly every one. And so when I was presenting the class this morning, I thought, I'm presenting this for myself, okay? And the message is, avoid debt at all costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I went through the different types or names of the different debts, like payday debt and title debt and things like that, and credit card debt, and all of them can lead to not being able to pay the next installment, and then you get bundled with a whole lot of other expenses, and then you borrow to pay off the borrower, and it's so I'm aware of that. So that's on my mind about this. Because when we apply for the visa, okay, we've got to put the money down up front.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And
whoever contrived these systems, I mean, there's no humanity or compassion involved in any of it, is it? It's just hurdle after hurdle after hurdle, isn't it? No, it's
yeah, unless you arrive illegally, it's a lot easier that way.
Yeah, that's the peculiar thing, isn't it?
Yeah. But anyway, so that's why I put the whole new business just on hold. Okay, I thought it's the timing, the thought process is fine. I mean,
it's true though what you say, because you need some clear space. You don't need distractions or worry or anything like that.
Which starting a new business would. I mean, it would take up a hell of a lot of time, and particularly the marketing. The concept. Okay, I understand. My mind is quite clear with that, but and I've written it all down. But the marketing I haven't even started to think about, because that's clearly the most important thing. Because in this day and age, everybody across the world uses ChatGPT to write their speeches and their presentations, and I find that even Gemini does a better job than ChatGPT. And yeah, so we'll just put it aside. I've made a decision this morning.
Yeah.
We'll just wait and see until whenever it is, May. And by May, we should know, we should get an answer. And
well, May's not that far away, is it? It's only well, we're nearly at the end of March already, aren't we? So
yeah, I think it's about the middle of April or the first week of April. Our other one expires, so our new one has to be in. As soon as you've submitted it, they acknowledge it, and they don't push you now. The ball's in their court, and they just give you a bridging visa until they've had a chance to look at it and made up their mind and so on. So the big thing is to understand what we're going to do, complete correctly, and
Mm.
and then wait. Yeah, I'll wait for that waiting period to come to an end before I start thinking about anything new.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I've got a good feeling about it, Don.
Oh, I think you should do it too. I think it's exactly, what you do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And we don't know what it's going to present within that 4 years. Okay, but be that as it may, we've got a consultant that is very clued up on all these visa stories. That's his full-time job. Okay, and yeah, of course he.
So what does he do? Does he advise you, or does he submit the application for you, or?
He submits it. He does everything. Okay, he just tells us what he wants, and we supply that. Like in the case of what I've just told you about the employer, he suggested it, and we went out. We approached the Sue's employer, and then we put the two of them in contact with each other.
Yeah, yeah.
And, he takes it from there, and then every time he wants some document, then that's up to us. But otherwise, we leave it totally up to him, and he makes sure it gets in on time, so that we don't lose out because we skipped the time limit. And so it's comforting, but it's also comforting that he knows exactly what the benefits are of such a visa. So we actually got his name, Jan Rodenbach, from your side of town. He used him because the consultant's actually a South African. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Younger, a lot younger, I think, than Jan and I. But he's been working as a consultant now for a long time. So here in Perth. So, and we've never had to go and see him, quite honestly. We just work online with him.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's interesting.
yeah.
The other thing I was going to ask you too is I had a quick read of all of that material that you sent through from Logos. Have you had any further thoughts about it, or talked to anyone about it at all?
Or? Thought about it, yes. Lots of thinking about it, but no, I haven't spoken to anybody. Which I would have. Well, there are a couple of Logos people I would have available, like the one who sent me that on Elmer Lee Hobson, but I also have Maddie, who is also a staunch Logos. And a few others. But I've just chosen not to speak to anybody. Again, it's like just waiting for something to I don't know to happen. I think probably to happen within me or with me. Might have something to do with also my timing and my visa and stuff like that, my situation. But also, Moya talks in as if time didn't matter, So
yeah, I sort of get the impression, that the way he talks and writes is an invitation just to sit there and contemplate, isn't it? It's you can read it quickly, but for the depth of the meaning to come through with it, you really need to sit with it, don't you? So
yeah, and one of the things I've done, even though I've watched and listened to them before, I went back to the website and I've been listening to some of the videos that were put there, and because whatever you contemplating or thinking, those years just take on a different significance, you know. And so I try and, you know, watch one of them maybe every third or fourth day.
Would you describe, and I guess the answer is probably yes, but I mean, like, are there particular, like, cultural nuances that perhaps you're more attuned to than I would be, or, you know, in the context of what he says, or, you know, like the language that he uses, does it communicate clearer to you because you've lived, you know, in the communities in which he's lived, or do you think that the nature of his language is more universal?
Interesting question. Remember, I've also got basically all the books he's ever written. Okay, and so he's got a style about himself when he writes and when he talks, but a lot of the writing, he tells me, just comes to him in a time. He actually says he almost sees it, so like peeling off the horizon, you know, and he starts to, you know, he writes it down and then has to go through all the practical issues of getting it typed up and reading it and then taking it to the printer and just printing maybe 10 copies. And
because, like, when I've been studying, you know, this ongoing study I'm doing, you know, like the last week or so, it's been around the flood narrative, you know, in Genesis. And it's really interesting that, like, when you look at it from the author's perspective of the cosmos, you know, there's a really strong argument to suggest that the flood is a language of accommodation around the idea of cosmic collapse. You know, because
I've never thought of it like that.
And the reason that there seems to be a strong argument for that perspective is that a lot of the flood narrative talks about, you know, the evil on earth and in heaven.
Yeah.
So like a flood of water on earth, you would think would have very little or no impact in heaven. But the idea of a cosmic collapse clearly could span a number of, you know, dimensions, you know. So
yeah, that's very interesting. It's a very interesting thought, that. And so, what does Noah's Ark represent in the flood?
The ark is a representation of the garden. So the garden was the, you know, God's view of humans and animals living in harmony in conjunction with God. So, you know, like walks in the garden with God every day and things like that. And the ark is portrayed to be like an interim garden. So it has 3 levels, like the garden. So they're like, you know, the high place, the middle place, and the low place. And the way that the animals came in 2 by 2, you know, is almost like retelling the creation story in miniature. In terms of coming in, and also then, you know, the flood is like the decreation or this cosmic collapse, which is, you know, order falling back into chaos. And then as the flood subsides, then it's order being restored, you know, with the fresh and the new. And as they come off the ark, again, it's virtually a cut and paste of the creation story, from the first page of Genesis. So, and you sort of see this pattern just keep on recurring and recurring, So, because the ark, like within that cultural context, within those times and within those cultures, is like from the Egyptian culture, is the vessel, that carries the god. So it's very much seen within the context of being this sort of sacred space, amongst the chaos. So that it's the fragment of order within this larger chaos of cosmic collapse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's a really intriguing invitation to think about, well, the rebellion in heaven, also, being subject to some sort of, I don't know, cleansing, I suppose, or reset as well. So yeah, so it just sort of intrigued me. I was just sort of wondering whether, Moya sort of uses that sort of poetic type of language, to convey meaning around certain ideas and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah, no, I think the answer to that is no. Okay. I think basically he calls a spade a spade. Okay. And he talks so that people like me can understand. And the key of his message is that our soul is part of God. Okay, our sole objective, no matter how we do it, what we do on earth, is to stay connected or get connected with that soul. Okay, and that's it. While you were talking, going back to you, I was thinking, is the flood anything? Does your author interpret it in any personal way? The flood, or is he talking about it being a cosmic thing?
Yeah, I think the reason that it gets a lot of scrutiny is there's always like paradoxical language within the scripture, like and it's just the way language is, I think, too, in some ways. Like when we want to emphasize something, we say, oh, I'm in enormous pain, I'm on death's door. Are you really? No, well, no, I'm not. But but you use that language to sort of put a lot of emphasis in it, So when you look at the flood narrative, it talks about, mass destruction in the sense of killing, lots of people and animals and all the rest of it. And literally within 2 pages, it then starts talking about these people who survived the flood,
Yeah.
So when you sort of look at some of those paradoxes, you think, well, how can that be? How can the language on the one hand be, everything was destroyed and everything was cleansed, and but I think, when you look at, so, well, what are they actually trying to convey here? And what's their perception of the cosmos? Because, I mean, in those days, they would not have presumably have any conception of, the Earth as a globe. It was almost like a snow dome. Like, there's, the waters above, like this rakia. And then there's the dry land, and then there's the waters below, So,
right.
And that was their conception. And when you think about it, it probably wasn't until, like, what was it, like the 1950s or 60s, when we got to see the first photograph of the Earth from not being on the Earth, So,
Yeah.
so it's very easy for us to imagine the Earth as as this ball in space. But for them, it must have been a very different conception of the world, Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, but I mean, it's fascinating, and I mean, and as I've pondered it too, because I mean, like as I've said to you a couple of times, this inquiry about what might come next or whatever. I sort of think about, like in that poetic language, think about, oh well, how would I describe what I think my call might be, but it's very vague in the sense that, because I still have this openness, but I jotted down some notes, using biblical language, and then, and I just wrote here, I desire to be a tree of life planted by streams of water, meaning truth,
Yeah.
and bearing fruit, so what that actually shows up as well, that remains to be seen, but in terms of the what, I think that sort of poetic language sort of presents in its own unique way, like an imagery of what I kind of aspire for. I think like a deep desire, perhaps.
Right.
So, but then then the Plumstead mythology kicks in, and then you start asking yourself, well, why?
Yeah.
And then it's sort of fascinating, because I was talking to a guy today on a completely unrelated topic, and like he was saying, Toyota has this process of five whys. Like, oh, there's a part failing on this model of car. So why?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it looks like, that it's getting too hot. So why? Oh, well, it looks like it wasn't installed properly. Oh, so why? Oh, well, it looks like the operator probably wasn't adequately trained. Okay, so we have a training issue.
Right. Right.
But it does underline the power of that question, though, doesn't it? So
Yeah, the why.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway.
But you can't ask that question when you're dealing with cosmos, the cosmos.
Well, I suppose it's beyond our comprehension, isn't it? So it's
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And I think the thing too is just having the level of awareness to contemplate these sorts of questions. I sort of can't help but think sometimes is that there's it's like a minority of people who probably do that. In some way. I mean, I have no evidence as to people who do or don't, but my
Yeah.
my observation is when I just observe people, I think, oh, you seem quite happily driving along with your music blaring, abusing the person in front of you or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I mean, I suppose we can never really know what another person thinks, even, but anyway.
No, unless they talk to you like we talk.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's the nature of communication too, isn't it? That like you seek to interpret the communication by trying to understand. So, what's your intention? What are you trying to convey to me?
Yeah.
Which is a very different question from, oh, well, that's what I heard you say.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I think if you do seek to understand someone by, what they're intending to communicate, I mean, in many respects, that's it's a very spiritual process almost, isn't it? That you're seeking to understand, and you're almost sort of putting yourself aside in favour of this person, to seek to hear, what it is that they're trying to convey.
Yeah, yeah. We're trying to join energies with them.
That's a good way of describing it, actually.
Yeah. With like your questions of Moya and so on, they time is just seems to be of little consequence, and yeah.
It seems to be a common thing for people like Moya, in that they just know that, if something's going to happen, it'll happen in the fullness of time, but you don't need to worry about it, do you? It's like
there's nothing you can do about it. Okay.
Nothing you do. No, it's inevitable. Yeah, and
he gives one instruction. It's communicate with the live stream of God, and it defines very clearly what that is. Okay. And how to do it. Okay. And yeah, I mean, he's got. Yeah, I remember. He wrote a book called African Renaissance.
Yeah, I remember you've spoken about it a few times. So.
Yeah, and I going back years now. For his birthday, I created a story. I wrote a story based on African Renaissance. Okay, and when we met on his birthday as a group, then I told him the story. And yeah, it's that African Renaissance is really what it's saying is that, maybe using the terminology of this discussion, when the flood is over, okay, the first, the healing of the planet is going to come from Southern Africa. And then up through Africa, and then to the entire world. Now, how you interpret that is another story. Okay, he doesn't use the flood analogy. Okay, he certainly talks about war and what's happened and alien interventions and things like that. He does get down to that sort of detail in some paragraphs in certain books. Okay.
So the alien intervention, like, does he mean that in the sense of angelic, or does he mean life forms from other parts of the cosmos?
I can only give you my thoughts on it. Okay, I don't mean that it. I think that it's an aggressive intervention from aggressive aliens, meaning to really put everybody into one camp. Okay,
so shock treatment.
Yeah, like enslavement. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's the impression I get. Okay, he does not use those words, and yeah, where that intervention is coming from as well is another issue. But I think I'm trying to say to use the analogy you used. So I think there'll be a lot of people on the ark, okay, that will, float out the Holocausts that are coming, okay. And he also talks at different places about 100 years of peace after that. And I don't really know where that fits in. And I'm slowly just picking up the odd books and reading them. He's written 4 books that he calls the Holy Gospels, which I guess will be the new Bible. I mean, that's outside of the other books. He's even got he's made it, given it a different cover, the 4 of them, and he did say there's going to be a and
it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, like we kind of make assumptions about what this alien intervention could be about, but I mean, and the reason I say that, I was watching, I guess you'd loosely call it a documentary, but there's this investigative journalist who argues quite strongly that there was a highly intelligent race, around at the end of the Ice Age, which was like, I don't know, I think 10 or 12,000 years ago.
Yeah, I always talk about 12,000.
Yeah.
The figure.
And his argument was that the alien invasion came in the form of like meteors or a comet or something, which had a catastrophic impact on climate and all of those sorts of things, and led to huge flooding, and even back then, as the climate changed as a result of this thing. So you could still argue in one sense that there was a lot of enslavement and death, and that just because of the nature of a comet or a huge meteor or meteors visiting the Earth. So and there's a lot of
earlier. Wasn't that about 65,000 years ago?
I could have been. I don't know. I'm
not
sure.
From my knowledge, that's when the dinosaurs age. In other words, when the dinosaurs became extinct.
Well, I think he was saying that like there was another one after that, though.
I'm sure the Ice Age is another one. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not, but the Ice Age I don't think had to do with meteorite. I think the dinosaurs one did. Okay.
Yeah.
And created a poisonous atmosphere all over the entire planet.
Yeah.
Okay, and killed everything, not just the dinosaurs. And then then the next calamity, there were a couple, and then about the most recent was the Ice Age of about 12,000 years ago.
Yeah, and the Ice Age must have been an incredible thing, from what science tells us. It talks about, a sheet of ice, like, for example, across North America, that was over 1 kilometre thick, so it's hard to imagine, isn't it? So
absolutely. And one wonders, I don't think what we alluding to maybe in this conversation is the end. Well, I don't think I think certainly there's going to be all sorts of upheaval, both from man versus man and man versus alien, and separately the sun playing its part on Earth and the climate change and so it's all sort of
lots of forces at play.
Lots of forces at play, yeah. And the only force at play which is permanent is the soul. Okay, indestructible. Okay,
yeah,
you can live in multiple universes. Okay, so it makes sense that we try our efforts to keep in contact with this key that we've got, the soul that can link us to the multi-universes and to the beginning of creation
and to God.
Yeah, through to God, and identify that we are. Okay, you and I, we had conversations about who are we, you know. But you know, we know, we've come to the conclusion in our conversations that we are soul. Okay, we've got nothing to do, and whether, you know, we keep some of this, these good looks that you and I have into other realms, you know, that's it's irrelevant. Okay, and what is relevant is that soul connection. So as we move on after this death into a new dimension of some description, that we still have that connection. So you can see how really unimportant everything else is on a day-to-day basis in this bubble that we're in. Okay?
Absolutely,
yeah. So we each got to find our own link, our own journey. Okay, and you know, mine is Moya. Okay, and mine is Logos. Okay, and I'm very, very fortunate to be able to have a book just to put my hand out and decide, okay, this one came to me today, so I'm going to, you know, I'm going to read it. And he talks about one of the ways is as you know, is contemplation, and so contemplation does play a role in my life. Okay. And sort of randomly, rather than at a alarm goes off and this is time now to contemplate type thing.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
You know, it's and yeah, and so I get
so would you describe contemplation as like a pondering, you know, a deep inquiry, or? Yeah,
you could definitely. What I for contemplation, you know, let's say in yours and my terminology, you know, you could contemplate. Let's say I've got this magnificent plant here in front of me. Let me just show you. Okay. All right. It's here on my desk, and now I have other plants in my lounge and near my lounge chair and so on. I might just take that image and contemplate it, that flower, okay, and contemplate that flower, or I might take a subject or a word that I read that is linked to something marvelous, you know, maybe a word from the Logos books or something, or I might just think about my soul, okay, contemplate my soul or the Logos. So it's something that allows your contemplation, allows that imagination to go beyond the physical. Okay. And then another thing that I do is I sit in a comfortable chair, in a comfortable position, and I close my eyes, almost when they're closed, almost crossed over my pupils in the closed lids, and you know, I see that light, that circle in the back there, and so I contemplate on that, you know, where's that going to lead? Where's that opening? Okay, and it becomes larger and larger depending on what time of the day it is, because I think it has to do with how tired I am or not. Okay, and then I actually go through that, and I get the sense of flying, and then I start seeing like physical forms or that you mountains or something like that, sort of general, and I just feel like I guess Superman flying in the air,
Yeah.
And so yeah, those sort of kind of relaxation. But the idea is, Moya says, never try and clear your mind altogether.
Yeah.
So it's just too dangerous. Okay. Because under false pretenses, you're going to get all sorts of things entering your being. Okay. And so he doesn't promote meditation. Okay. Not for spiritual reasons, he doesn't. Okay. But for relaxation or something like that, that could be different. So yeah, that's what I do with contemplation, and then of course, what he also does is encourage the use that some of the ancients, the original races that are still evident around today in a various religion, is to chant. He calls it the what does he call it? The
Yeah.
Yeah. So
even that, like the name of God, like the Yahweh, it apparently was originally designed as a representation of your breath, like the divine breath. So it's sort of like that sort of.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I feel like we've talked about nothing but everything.
Tell me something that's unusual. Yeah, interesting.
Well, that might be a good place to leave it tonight, do you think?
Yeah, I guess so. Thank you. Thank you for being my friend. I appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. I know it's very, very important. So you're around next week? Another?
Yeah. Well, shouldn't I be? What's next week?
Oh, no. Well, Easter is Friday week.
Oh, is it? No, we're not going anywhere. If we do, it will just be a trip during the day or something.
Yeah.
And we, knowing my wife, we'll and I must remember, we'll probably each buy ourselves an Easter egg,
Yeah.
And then you see, I'll probably use that opportunity to contemplate, what is Easter, okay, and what is an Easter egg representing, in my way of thinking, as opposed to, a religious point of view,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I take a picture of the Easter egg I buy.
Very good. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, lovely talking, and as I said, I'll see you next week.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay then.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.